Good morning to all of you CTM students for the academic year 2022. My name is Nhlanhla Lupahla, your tutor for this module. Let me start by congratulating all of you for making it to the year 2022. Indeed, 2021 was a difficult year for all of us, having to cope with the pandemic, but we wish you a better year and that all your resolutions are fulfilled. Right, so welcome to this module, Classroom Teaching and Management. And for any teacher, this is the license for you to be able to practice in a classroom, because it teaches you how to handle your learners, how to handle the process, and you have to apply a number of educational paradigms which guide the teaching and learning processes. This includes theories, principles, and broader perspectives which you need to understand in preparation of the oncoming examinations. Now, I have to emphasize that this presentation is not the only source of learning and preparation for your examination, so you don't just confine yourself to the presentation as your guide. You have other sources that you are privy to. One of them, your tutor, that is myself, and I'm glad that a lot of you have been phoning where you had challenges, and I think we have managed to discuss and give you proper orientation in your preparation. You have your textbook. I do understand some of you had challenges with your Kindle, but after consultations with your course coordinators, I'm sure this has been solved. Your study guide, the syllabus learning outcomes are clearly defined, and you have these documents. And you can resort also to any other sources of knowledge, the internet. And I should warn, when you go to the internet, make sure these are authentic sources that you are using. You should know exactly which sites are reliable sites for use. Now, you are aware that your module is divided into 9 units, and I would advise that we deal with all the units in our preparation, as the examination will endeavor to cover all of these units in one way or another. So Unit 1 are the key features of effective teachers and teaching. 2, design and explain elements of learning sessions. And Unit 3, you need to analyze and design different types of lessons or learning sessions. Unit 4, investigate and apply cooperative methods. These are group learning methods which are considered effective for supporting learning. Unit 5, discuss and facilitate learning by using a variety of methods. Unit 6, discuss and apply creative methods. Unit 7, evaluate the managing of learners and the learning environment. Unit 8, evaluate managing of classroom learning and learner involvement. And Unit 9, reflect on effective teaching practices for novice teachers, which most of you are going to be after graduation. You will still need to undergo a mentoring process as novice teachers. Now, the presentation in brief aims to enhance your understanding of the requirements of the action verbs. Now, action verbs here we refer to when you answer your questions. The questions will either ask you to discuss, to explain, etc., etc. So you should understand when we say discuss, what exactly does that entail? Or when we say explain, what exactly do we want you to do? Or when we say compare, what exactly do we want you to do? There is a slide that is coming later where we will give examples and clarity on the action verbs and their meanings. And the presentation also aims to give you an overview of key focus areas in this module. We also highlight challenges observed from the previously submitted and marked assignments so that we don't fall into the same challenges in the oncoming examinations. And of course, to give you an orientation towards the expected examination competencies and recommend best presentation format for answering multifaceted questions. Multifaceted questions is when they ask you, for example, what problems are rendered by the use of textbooks, or what are the disadvantages, for example, of using textbooks. And on top of that, we may ask you for each disadvantage, how would you deal with, or what solution would you bring to overcome that disadvantage? So you have more than one answer to a specific question. That is what we mean by multifaceted questions. In general, for your examination preparation, like we have indicated, ensure that you have all the required resources for this module. Spend enough time studying the prescribed materials. You try not to do rote memory or this, what we call cramming, because all of us have sat in a classroom as learners, or some of you are practicing teachers. The things discussed in this module are the daily things that we experience inside the classroom. So in cases where you run out of ideas, try to think of the practical classroom situation in your daily practice and see how you can deal with that. And of course, I have talked of the terms discuss, explain, describe, etc. You need to understand those verbs. One thing I would like to say, your paper is structured in different sections, multiple choice, and then the structured questions. You find students leaving a multiple choice question unanswered. Well, if you run out of ideas, just take a good guess and tick any of those, because you are not penalized for answering wrongly. So do your best and give a good guess, a good shot at any of those. But we will give you the strategies also of answering multiple choice questions. Right, let me start with the action verbs that we talked of. Just a few that are frequently used. Analyze, we ask you to examine information in detail to discover the main ideas, components, patterns, or relationships. So you are given information and you try and bring it together to make sense out of it in terms of establishing what patterns you get and what are the main ideas. Compare, you look at similarities and differences. Let's say, for example, compare learner-centered education and teacher-centered education. You look at similarities and differences. And a table format is most ideal to do this. Define. I think we all know definitions here. I don't need to go beyond what we have here. Describe, provide detailed features in a logical sequence. Discuss, give a clear description, and then argue the points by looking at the positive and negative features and arrive at a conclusion. In other words, if you are discussing a situation, like discuss the cooperative learning methods, you look at the advantages and disadvantages, or strengths and weaknesses, and you arrive at a conclusion of how best it would be to apply these methods. Explain, describe something and indicate relationships between things, making clear the why, that is the reasons, and the how, giving examples of some of these features. So like I've indicated, your question or your examination paper is structured in sections. 1, multiple choice questions, and I do again underline the point I have highlighted in red there, that you will not be penalized for incorrect answers. Therefore, attempt to answer all the multiple choice questions. You have a component of matching questions where you are given column A, column B, and you are requested to match exactly one word in column A to a phrase in column B. And that is by either connecting with a line to the matching word and phrase, or writing the option, letter option of column B next to the option in column A. I think we are familiar with this from our assignments. In case where you find a word apparently matching to more than one, select the best match. In other words, by best match, you cannot allocate 2 matches to one word in column B. So you have to look at which one is the best match, and then you allocate accordingly. Answering multiple choice questions requires that you read the whole question before glancing over the answer options. In other words, read the question, try and predetermine an answer before even looking at the answer options. Meaning you answer in your mind first, read all the answer questions. There are those that are obviously not the correct options. You will see that this one is not. That is by eliminating the wrong answers, you reduce it to fewer options to select from. And that's why we say if you get stuck, then you make what we call an educated guess, where you know it's just between 1 or 2. And you will have eliminated the obviously incorrect ones. So that allows you to narrow down to the most likely correct answers. Oh, sorry. I think I've skipped one slide here. Right, section 2, structured questions. And I go back to what we said about the multifaceted structured questions. For example, list 2 advantages of a textbook and suggest solutions to address or to mitigate each disadvantage. So we are saying the best way or presentation layout would be to get a column for disadvantages and a column for solutions. For example, the textbook can get lost or damaged. So to avoid textbook getting lost or damaged, what is the solution? Ensure that textbooks are properly stored and covered in plastic. That would mean maybe providing cupboards, lockable cupboards in your classroom, or advising learners as well to ensure that even if they take these textbooks home, they should have a specific section where they safely store these textbooks and cover them in plastic. One disadvantage again is weak readers and learners with learning styles based on seeing or hearing do not benefit much. Remember, the textbook is mainly interpreted visually because you have to read with your eyes. There are those that may be having eye problems and it becomes a disadvantage. So to overcome that, we need to supplement the use of the textbook with other audiovisual services or sources, e.g. videos, audio recordings, and you remember we have a section where we clearly talk of the 3 channels of learning, audio, visual, and kinesthetic. So this actually relates closely to another section of your module. We will emphasize that you understand some of the important theories and principles to learning. I'm not telling you what is in the exam, but I'm highlighting some of the important theories and principles that you should prepare yourselves adequately in terms of your examination. Core cycle of experiential learning. Experiential learning, as it says in the word, is learning by interacting with your environment, learning by doing, which proves to be an effective method of learning. So it is an important theory which describes experiential learning in 4 phases. The challenge we have with students here answering this question is you tend just to give the phases in any order, but remember these phases occur in a specific order. There is one that comes first, second, third, and fourth, and you must present them accordingly in terms of which one occurs first when you are requested to mention these phases. Principles of giving praise and criticism. These are principles that relate mainly to how you give feedback to learners and ensuring that you don't hurt the learners' feelings and consequently affect their confidence. So it's important that even when you praise or criticize learners, you don't hurt their feelings and you uphold their level of confidence. Principles for the effective use of teaching and learning resources. If resources are not correctly used in class, then they become useless. And it is important when you are going to use, for example, PowerPoint presentations or technology in a classroom, that you don't just pick it up that moment you are going to the classroom. You have to rehearse and see that these things are working as intended. So it is important that such resources, you design them, you gather them, and you book them and test them in advance to see that they actually, you are able to use them to address the intended purpose. Principles underpinning effective teaching. These are theoretical bases upon which the teaching practice becomes a success. For example, it is important to understand that not all learners learn the same way. So you need to understand your learners. That is one principle, for example. Understand the learning preferences of your learners. There are some learners that prefer to learn by doing, etc., etc. And when you design your activities, then you apply such principles. Understanding the learning process is important. Knowing the interaction between learners, the interaction between learner and teacher, give time for such to occur effectively. And provide a supporting environment in your classroom. These are just but a few examples. Important guidelines, tips, and steps for improving teaching and learning requires that you understand those steps for developing self-directed learning. So this is one component that you need to focus on in preparation for your exam. Those steps, please go to your study guide and understand those steps and the descriptive details to each of the steps. Disciplinary problems of learners, their causes, and how to manage them. Obviously, as a teacher, you'll be getting very frustrated if you get into a class and you can't control the classroom. It's a noisy classroom, learners are throwing papers around. You will not use a whip. These days you find yourself in prison for that. So you should learn the principles, the guidelines that we use to manage the classroom. For example, fast learners, if you leave them unattended to, when you have given work to a class and they are fast learners who finish earlier than others and then they remain inactive, there will definitely be a source of disturbance, and you need to know what to do with those learners while you are attending to the rest. The instructional planning process, strengths and limitations of different teaching strategies, I think we have discussed this a bit previously. Understand how to plan to conduct professional development workshops. This is for teachers. As we have said, you will be novice teachers when you get to your practice after graduation, and you need to continuously develop yourselves through workshops. The contemporary classification of teaching strategies, we should also focus on that in our preparation for the exam. Which instructional strategy is appropriate? How do I manage my emotional intelligence and those of learners, of course? And how do you vary your teaching methods in accordance to different learning styles of learners? Like I have indicated, learners learn or prefer different learning styles. So you should integrate that in your teaching and address all learners' needs appropriately. And with this, I would like to thank you and wish you a successful preparation for your examinations. As your tutors, we are still available to support you throughout this preparation time where appropriate. And all the best in your preparation. Thank you.